Okay. Yes. Listen real quick to headphones. And pardon me when I have to look away just to check everything.
That's all right.
Make sure it's still working right. Yeah, okay. One thing I should have done that I didn't do, I'm going to have you do this, and this is just for archiving purposes. If you would just state your name, your full name, and I don't think I need to. Yeah, let me go ahead and have you spell it as well.
You didn't have me do that.
I know. I've got documentation on everybody, but going forward, I really need to have people state their names on the camera, because these files are going to live somewhere in the Ethernet.
Okay.
So if you just state your
Okay,
full
I'm Sister Wormnest, Sister of St. Joseph. Wormnest is Wurmnest.
Okay. And everyone calls you Sister Reed?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we're looking good, we're sounding good. Okay, so same thing. Tell me a little bit, describe yourself as a little girl.
As a little girl. Well, I come from a big family, a farm family, so I grew up in central Illinois on a farm. We were very close-knit. My mother died when I was in first grade, so my older brothers and sisters basically did the raising of me. We still going home next week for a reunion, so it's exciting times. And we spent most of our time playing ball, either basketball up in the hayloft in the wintertime or baseball and softball after schools.
And would you describe yourself as a girly girl or a tomboy?
More of a tomboy, probably.
Okay. You learned a lot about life growing up on a farm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you ever get into trouble?
I just probably got into trouble lots of times. No big trouble, you know. No, I didn't get in trouble very much, but I just.
Did you play pranks on your siblings, or did they play pranks on
Well,
you?
I'm way down at the end of the line, the 11th of 12, so the pranks were played on me more than I played on them.
Okay. I understand. So you have a very unique story. Tell me a little bit about grade school years and kind of growing up a little bit. Talk a little bit about that here.
Okay, I grew up, like I said, in rural central Illinois. My grade school days I went to school with some kids from the time from children when I was in first grade through a couple years of college, the same kids. So that was exciting, and you got to know them pretty well. But it was not a Catholic area, so all the time that I went to school, from first grade through high school, part of one year, there was another Catholic in my class. So that kind of influenced you. You had to learn your faith as you went along, because you were always defending it as you went along. Mm-hmm.
So at an early age, did you kind of get an inkling of what you want? Did you want to become a sister at some point? Or?
Well, I always knew I wanted to do one of two things. I either wanted to be the first woman to play Major League Baseball, which, as you can see, I didn't make that, or I wanted to be a sister. But by the time I finished high school, I had a scholarship to Illinois State University, and I went to Illinois State, and by the time we finished with college, I got married and had a family before I entered the convent. So I raised a family before I became a sister.
So how many years was that in raising your family before you became a sister?
Well, until they were of age, 21 or 22, and my daughter was married. Because if you're going to enter religious life, you have to be free of any family responsibilities.
So did you talk about that over those years, about what you wanted to do at some point?
Not much, because I never wanted to say to my children, get on with your life so I can do something different. I always was very careful not to do that.
That's amazing to me, because you have this in the back of your mind. You know, some people think about retirement, some people think about, you know, whatever. But that's a big goal to have when most people are ready to just relax and call it quits. You know, once you get them out of the nest.
When I went home one summer, when I had decided I was going to enter and had been accepted to enter with the Sisters of St. Joseph, my 4 sisters picked me up at the airport. And I said, well, I have some exciting news that I was going to enter into religious life. And their response was, well, we wondered when you were going to get around to that. So it wasn't a surprise to anyone but me, I think.
Talk a little bit about your kids.
I have 2 children. Todd lives in the house that we grew up in. He works in construction, mostly on his own. He has 1 daughter who lives in Daytona. I have a daughter, Tina. She has 2 children. One is married and has 3 children and lives in Texas, so far away. And the other one just graduated from high school. And they live here in town.
Oh, that's good. That's good. In 1986. Talk a little bit about that.
It was a very good year. It was the year my first grandchild was born. She was born in April, and I entered the convent in September.
Wow. You just seem to hit all these, like, one more thing, life-changing moments, and you hit them all at the same time. That's great. And so how long were you there? How long?
There where?
When you entered into, I guess, when you went to St. Augustine, when you were.
Okay, I lived in St. Augustine off and on for 3 years.
Okay.
Because I had my postulancy in St. Augustine and worked at CPS and took classes. And then I had my first novitiate year in St. Augustine, and that's when you don't do any work outside the convent. You're really studying, and they're learning to know you better, and you're learning to know religious life better. Then the second year of the novitiate we call the constitutional year, I spent some time in working with 4-year-olds in St. Augustine, and then I went to Branford for a while and worked with a sister that lived out there who worked with the rural community out in Branford. From there, when I made my first vows, I then went to St. Stephen's in Miramar, Florida, and I was there for 2 years. Then after that, I came to St. Pius, and I've been there ever since.
Okay. In Miramar, what kind of area was that where you were?
Oh, what kind of area?
Was it?
It wasn't an inner city area, but it wasn't an affluent area
Okay.
by
It was a little
any
rough
means.
then.
A little rough, yes.
Were there particular challenges there?
Well, the challenge for me was in South Florida is if you're going to learn a language, you better learn it when you're young. And I just was not good at the Spanish. It was always interesting when you'd have a parent conference and you would say something and the child would interpret it to the parent. You were never sure. I wonder if they're telling the parent what I really said or not. So language was the biggest challenge there.
So how have you, I mean, I see in your bio that you're considered the sister mom. How has that played out for you?
It's played out very well for me because, you know, other sisters have families too. It's just the parents and the nieces and nephews and brothers and sisters. And I've been able to keep in contact with my family. And they came to visit me when I was in St. Augustine, and we still do things together.
I just gotta imagine that's gotta be, in some ways, kind of tough, but.
It is, but it's exciting too.
Yeah.
And one time my son said, well, you know, you could have gotten married and moved to California, we'd never see you. But at least here I'm in the area and I get contact with them.
That's great. So I guess along the same lines, the same question, what What's been the most challenging part of being a sister for you?
Well, like Sister Lee said, I think the most challenging part is living community. Things that you used to do on your own, being very independent, and then changing from being a very independent person to an interdependent person where I depend on them, they depend on me. That's a challenge every day.
And then what brings you joy?
Probably the same thing having somebody that you can pray with every day and share with every day, that brings me great joy. And, when you're working at your ministry and you say, well, I need somebody to talk this over with, you have somebody there to do that with. And the support of the whole congregation, knowing that if I ask for prayer, the whole congregation will pray with me and for me. And then they ask for prayer, and then you have the opportunity to return that with them.
And like I said before, I was talking a little bit about the idea of the superhero in all of you. And you think about the tasks that come your way that you're challenged with. And, I've heard stories from sisters where, you're told to go do something, and it's like you're on your own with very little help with the church even. So, and I think of with your particular story where you've raised a family, and that in and of itself is a lifetime of exhaustion.
And rewards.
And rewards, it is. It is. It's a thankless job for the most part, but I guess you get those rewards towards the end when you see your kids are doing well on their own and whatnot. I'm almost at that point. I still have a 24-year-old who's had a rough start, stop-start, and I have a 17-year-old who's about to graduate high school. So, one day I'm going to see them self-sufficient and maybe not coming back to the house. But when I think about these superhuman women who have these challenges and these tasks, and they're led by God to do these things that need to be done, and no one else is doing them. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I don't mean to make this in a secular way, but there's such a fantastic strength of women to take on things without even asking whether they should or they're capable of, or they just do it. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts about that?
Well, one of the exciting, it might sound strange, but one of the exciting things that we have is when our sisters die at the wake service, the vigil service, they tell stories about them. Well, since I didn't enter until 1986, a lot of these sisters had most of their active ministry before I knew them. And it's always exciting to listen to how they went out and, just like you said, they just went out and did things that needed to be done. They saw what needed to be done. They knew it was a gospel calling. And I think that's important to keep in mind with all our ministries. It all comes from the gospel calling. And they said, well, it needs to be done. We're here. We'll do it. And that really is, they went with the migrants. They went to the homeless. They went, out into the streets that hardly anyone else would go into. And it's exciting to listen to those stories.
That's absolutely right. I've been so inspired by these individual stories, and even some of the sisters we've met who don't have all the memory there anymore. There's those little 30-second stories. They're so powerful, and that's what they remember, and that's where, in some cases, that's where their mind and their heart is still at. But it's so inspiring.
And I think the thing that's most inspiring is they didn't go out and do those things because it made them look big or made them look important. They just went out and did them because that's what they knew God was calling them to do.
Have you ever thought about, it's part of the teaching process and the way we pass down information. Have you ever thought about the power of storytelling?
All the time. and not only in listening and knowing about the past, but I'm a teacher. I taught before I entered with the sisters, and I still teach. And you can tell the children, these are the facts. But if you have a story to go with it, then that means something to them. And if you have a personal story that goes with it, that even makes it more important to them.
There again, you both have given me these little nuggets that I've needed to sort of set the stage for the whole reason of doing this documentary. Because when we first started talking about it with the church, it was of course telling the original historic piece, and then talking about the influence that the sisters have had across the state of Florida in big ways. But and that's great. The history is important. But I just kept driving home to everybody once we came to the table that, history is happening right now. And the sisters we have right now, the things that they have done, the things that they are doing are just as important, just as impactful as the original 8. And so I really want this to be a focus in the documentary to show that this history continues, and it's still just as vibrant and just as alive and just as impactful on individual souls as it was back then.
Yeah, and even if there's not as many of us, those stories are still going to live, and they still are going to affect people. And maybe even if the young ladies or the women coming in don't come in as vowed religious, the fact that they can hear these stories and they can go out and do the work that we have been doing, and hopefully we can inspire other people, even if they're not religious, to say, oh yes, this needs to be done, and I can work with the sisters. Maybe there won't be 20 sisters doing the work, there might just be one, but you might have to gather in other people to do it with you. And I think that's important.
That's a great impact. So what have we not talked about that you want to talk about?
We didn't talk about the fact that we have associates.
Okay.
And those are lay men and women who have a prayer life similar to ours, and they have a connection with our charism of unity and reconciliation. And they spread our charism, and it's really important today, probably more than ever before, the unity and reconciliation in our world. And if we work with the lay people who pray with us and work with us and help spread that through the associate program, I think that's important.
I didn't know about that.
Oh, we should have asked Sister Elise when she was up here. She probably knows more about it. But it's a group of men and women. They don't have to be Catholic, but I think most all of them are. But they just feel a connection with us, and with our charism and with the work that we do. We meet with them. Some areas meet monthly. In Jacksonville, we meet every other month with our associates and pray with them and do activities together. There are several, even at school, when we do this eye screening and different things that we have to have volunteers come in for. Several of the associates will come and work with us.
Is this under an umbrella or an official sort of a name?
We call them the associates of the Sisters of St. Joseph.
Okay.
And they make a commitment. They have a pin that they wear that looks like ours. Only underneath it says associate.
Okay. When was this started? Do you know?
It was started probably about 1984, 5, 6, in that time span.
Good. That's good. I'll make a note of that because we'll make that a point to dig a little deeper and get some information.
Sister Rita is now the sister who coordinates the associate program throughout the state.
Okay.
Sister Marie Therese was really the power to get it started and get it going.
Wow. Okay. So beyond that, is there anything else we want to talk about?
I can't think of anything right now.
Okay. I want to get you to touch on a little bit what we talked about earlier, and that was the quote about. Let me start the camera here. was a good moment to pause because the camera stopped.
Okay.
We talk about the power of women and the quote from the father or the founding father who said,
We're to do any of the work that a woman is capable of doing.
right,
That's exciting, isn't it? It
Yeah.
really is, because it doesn't limit us to anything, and it's changed over time. And it will continue to change over time because our society allows women to do more so that we're able to go out and do more work than we probably were able to do at the beginnings.
yeah, it just when I heard that the first time, I thought, you know, if that were to be said in any point in time, from the first time to 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, it would have had an even more impactful meaning.
Because people say, well, what do your sisters do? Well, with your interviews, you know our sisters do a great variety of things because that's what we're capable of doing. So why limit yourself? In God's kingdom, we can go out and do God's work in many, many areas. He also said we're supposed to divide the city and go out. So you look at the area and say, well, what needs to be done? And then divide the city up. Okay, if this needs to be done in the inner city, then that's where we need to go work, in different areas.
So I know that you all have enough on your plate, and you all have your areas that you're working with every day, and concerns that you have. You know, you can't turn on the radio or the TV in this city and not hear about another shooting or something tragic like this that's every single day. I guess the question is, are you able to insulate yourself from that could be so negative and bring you down every day?
Well, I don't think we insulate ourselves from it because that's part of what we're living in. But with our prayer life and our dependence upon God, we're able to not have that pull us down. We work in an inner city. I work in an inner city school now. And, you know, our students see and hear things that probably in my lifetime I've never seen and heard. And so we have to have a way of pulling on our faith to work with those children and help them get through some of those things.
Let's you know that brought something to mind. What are the challenges for you? Because I'm going back to the original sisters. You know, they came here to teach the newly freed slaves or the children of those slaves. What are some of those kind of bureaucratic challenges or whatever that you have today in teaching some of these kids that are from a different, you know?
Yeah. The challenge today with teaching the children in society, it's all these other things that distract them, the iPads and we used to just blame it all on the TV, but now there's lots of things to blame it on that pull them away from what we want them to be learning and the type of life we want them to learn to live. And the things they see on TV, that this become natural to them. And working with them, we're trying to teach them, well, no, that's not natural. That's not God's way for them. That's not the way you want your life to go. That type of thing. And then keeping in mind, too, that my ministry, quote, is teaching, but my ministry isn't just in the school, it's in the parish, it's in the neighborhood, it's with the people you meet at the grocery store as you go around, just kind of how you conduct yourself and have a good attitude, you know, and not get quite so angry sometimes. Sometimes you, but you have to work with that.
I know when you say teaching, a lot of times when people hear teaching, they're thinking maybe something here. But in your case, well, I guess in most truly dedicated teachers, there's many levels of teaching, and there's a lot of love in those layers, and there's more than
Academics.
yes.
You're teaching life skills too as you go along, and faith skills.
Is there a particular story with a child or something that happened that you can think of that would be an example of that, or someone you saw come through a difficult time that you were kind of there to shepherd them with, or I don't know what I'm looking for, but if anything came to mind.
Well, not so much as St. Pius, but even before I entered one day, some visitors were coming to the school, and everybody was supposed to have everything just right and going on. All the children were supposed to be doing a certain thing. And this one little kid kept pulling on my leg, on my skirt I probably had on. I said, you gotta sit down, we gotta get started. He said, and he just wouldn't. I said, what is your problem today? And he says, when I go home this afternoon, I have to decide whether I'm gonna go live with my mom or my dad. Now, this kid was in 4th grade. So, that's a heart-pulling story. Still, years later, I think about that little guy. And our kids are making those kind of decisions, and they shouldn't have to be making those kind of decisions. Am I going to be loyal to mom, or am I going to be loyal to dad? Or, we shouldn't be asking our children to do those things, and we are. Society is asking it.
Yeah, that's tough. Mm-hmm. All right, what else do we want to cover we haven't talked about?
I can't think of anything else.